Number 2. The Blood Eagle. It's the ninth century somewhere in Scandinavia, and a Viking warrior has just captured the man who killed his father. He's been waiting years for this moment. A simple death would be too merciful. This calls for something special, something his father's spirit can watch from Valhalla and know that his death has been properly avenged. This calls for the Blood Eagle. Now, there's been debate among historians about whether the Blood Eagle was actually performed or if it was just something the Norse poets made up to sound tough. But multiple sagas describe it in enough detail that most scholars believe it probably happened at least a few times. And here's how it supposedly worked. The victim would be placed face down. A blade would be used to cut open the skin along the spine. Then, one by one, the ribs would be hacked away from the backbone and pried outward until they stuck out from the body like wings, while the victim was still alive and breathing. And then, as a final touch, the lungs would be pulled out through the opening and draped over the exposed ribs. The wings would flutter as the victim took their last agonizing breaths, creating the image of a bloody eagle. The most famous account comes from the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok. When Ragnar, one of the most legendary Viking warriors of all time, was captured and killed by King Aelle of Northumbria by being thrown into a pit of snakes, his sons vowed revenge. When they finally captured Aelle, they performed the blood eagle on him. The sagas describe Aelle's back being carved open while he was still very much alive, his ribs cracked and spread, his lungs pulled out and laid upon his shoulders. Whether every detail is historically accurate or not, the fact that the Vikings told these stories to each other as examples of what happens when you mess with the wrong family tells you a lot about the culture. This wasn't a punishment for petty crime. This was reserved for the kind of insult that could only be answered with the most savage, theatrical form of execution imaginable. You didn't just kill your enemy, you turned his body into a message. Some historians have argued that the blood eagle is just a misinterpretation of poetic language in the sagas, that phrases about carving an eagle on someone's back were metaphorical, not literal. But other scholars point out that the Norse had plenty of perfectly normal ways to describe killing someone, and they specifically chose to describe this process in graphic, step-by-step detail across multiple independent sources. At some point, you have to accept that maybe, just maybe, these guys actually did it. The Vikings were many things, but subtle was not one of them. One thing that makes the blood eagle even more disturbing is the ritual aspect. Some accounts describe the executioner rubbing salt into the open wound while the ribs were being spread apart. Whether this was to add to the pain or had some kind of religious significance, nobody's really sure. But the blood eagle wasn't just an execution, it was a ceremony, a sacrifice to Odin. The victim wasn't just being killed, they were being offered to the gods as proof that their killer was worthy of their father's legacy. When you think about it from that perspective, the cruelty wasn't a bug, it was the entire point.